at this stage, I was like, whoever comes, it's going to be a miracle. But, we had a few women there, and of course, it's always in my mind that it's how can I support my clients find more purpose, connect more with positive impact in a way that's authentic. So on the first day of the retreat, there was a fashion show at the Peponi Hotel, which is like it's a beautiful place, and it's very authentic. And it's the only place in the village where people gather together, right? And so the children of the village had created some.
Have a chance to win a 6-day, all expenses paid for trip to Cabo, Mexico. Hey, yo, this is Christian D. Evans, host of Journey with Christian D. Evans podcast. First, thanks for listening to this amazing episode. If you find this valuable, please share, like, rate, and comment in the section below and show our guests some love. Secondly, we are very excited to finally release the never before open to the public our Be Uncommon Mastermind, where you can network, collaborate, and receive one-on-one mentorship with 8 and 9-figure business owners. I have had the opportunity to network and interview top-level 8 and 9-figure business owners on our podcast, like Nick Cavuto, who produced $2 billion for his clients and works with people like Gary Vaynerchuk and Tony Robbins. Also interviewed Pascal Bachman, who has built a mid-8-figure business. Someone like Vinny Fisher, which is a 4-time 8-figure business owner. JC Granger, Mandy Ellefson, and so many more. And we have realized that many of our listeners struggle with lack of clarity in their business, lack of clarity in structure and scale of growth of their company. And it feels like you're handcuffed to a treadmill. And it's like going full speed, and you realize if you misstep once, the full thing comes tumbling down. That is why we are opening up our Be Uncommon Mastermind, where you have the chance to work directly with top-level 8 and 9-figure business owners in my network. Plus, when you schedule a call, show up, and learn more, you are entered for a chance to win a 6-day trip to Cabo, Mexico. All expenses paid for. So be sure to go to christiandeevans.com/mastermind-now. And the link is actually in the description below. Make sure you go to christiandeevans.com/mastermind-now. And make sure you sign up, schedule a phone call, learn more, and see if you qualify for our Be Uncommon Mastermind. Now, we are very exclusive on who we are taking on, so make sure you click on that link below. So guys, enjoy this next episode, and remember, be uncommon if you can. Cheers. Thank you so much for tuning into Journey with Christian D. Evans podcast. I'm your host, Christian D. Evans, and we have a conscious leader we're going to be talking to today. She's also a consultant, a change architect, unlocking the genius and the most successful business leaders in the UK and internationally, elevating individuals, businesses, and the global community into a new paradigm of positive and purposeful impact. She combines strategic thinking and business awareness with spiritual and emotional intelligence. She brings her solid business experience as a corporate leader in the financial markets. At the age of 30, she was making a 7-figure annual compensation. Then the year she gave birth to her son, by the age of 33, was appointed as one of the youngest female sales managers with 40 people across Europe under her supervision. Now, her particular path toward the conscious leadership, which we will be discussing with her very shortly, took her out of the corporate world and on a worldwide adventure where she trained in coaching, yoga, mindfulness, bioenergetic healing, and hypnotherapy. She has also developed an interest in indigenous healing practices, and particularly the influence of consciousness and the mind on the process of healing. Instead of leaving the business world forever, her experience inspired her to build a system of development that would transcend the leadership status quo and align businesses with a positive impact. She's been featured in so many different publications. My friend, Marika Messenger. How are you doing today, Marika?
Hi, Christian. I'm doing great. It's great to be with you. Thank you.
Hey, it is a pleasure being with you as well. And just to see the extensive experience that you've had and being able to impact hundreds upon hundreds of people just in the UK and internationally, I think it's just really awesome to see what you've got going on. But first of all, I would love to talk about your journey specifically and identifying what conscious leadership is and how you've been able to use your journey to make an impact in others.
Sure. So with regards to my own journey, I started in the financial markets, so on the trading floor, and I worked on the trading floor for 14 years. So I started as an equity analyst, then an equity sales, then eventually I was head of equities for Europe for a French bank. So I was managing 40 people, and trading floor is a bit of a jungle. So I really had to learn to play the game, and I really had to develop some very strong masculine traits within myself, because it was a world of domination, competition, power, loads of craziness around as well. But with hard work and just embracing the rules, I actually managed to do very well and to be very successful. But as I was progressing towards this successful journey in the financial markets, I was also working on myself, because at 28 I had like a family drama, and I got sick, and I had to kind of start to understand my emotions, my thoughts, and all of that. And so the more I was doing that, the more I was becoming a better leader and also a better human being. The more I was able to understand my teams, my clients, and eventually realize that, the business world is made of people. And if you don't understand people, you don't understand business. And if you don't understand yourself, you don't understand people. So the more I was able to do so, the more I was becoming more successful, but also enjoying more what I was doing, connecting more with people, and really being much more intentionate towards what I was creating. So, I really started to dive very deep into self-work and self-awareness, and I'm very curious. I'm an adventurer, I'm a trailblazer, so I tried many things, and I had massive transformations within myself, to the point where I was like, I really need to share that. I want to, connect people with what I'm learning. So I started to do this at work, but that calling to actually do something with what I was learning and who I was becoming was so strong. Then eventually one day I jumped. And it was quite synchronistic, because at the time my company was going through a restructuration, and my boss said to me, Marika, at the end of the year, your job is dead, but I'll find you another one. And I was like, no, I'm going to go, and, I'm going to follow what's stirring inside of me. So I trained for 2 years in many disciplines. You've shared most of them. But what was really like the big understanding of why I wanted to bring conscious leadership to the world was that, one, I did a training. It was an initiation into a lineage of Mexican healers, and we were actually training in the Brazilian rainforest for 3 weeks, and it was quite intense. 6 a.m. to like midnight every day, growing and learning. And one day we had to do an exercise, which was basically break some wooden boards with our hands. And on one side of the board, we would write the things that we wanted to let go of within ourselves, and on the other side, the things that we wanted to attract. And, I know my strength, I know my inner strength, but I also know when something feels like it's not going to work for me. And I had this hinge within me, like I was like, oh my God, I don't know, I'm not going to manage to do that. And we were a group of 12, and, like my colleagues in this adventure were going before me, and most of them were actually breaking the board. And when it was my turn, I tried, and nothing happened, but like hurting my hand. So the teacher, she sent me back on the bench, and then she called me, and I tried again, and then it didn't work, and she sent me back on the bench again. And then next thing I know is that my whole body starts to shake. I start to cry. And, I don't cry much, right? I mean, when you're on the trading floor for 15 years, you don't cry. Otherwise, you commit suicide, right? So I was just being with what was going on with me. And my teacher, she came and she said, you're breaking a big pattern within yourself. I was like, okay. And she called me again. And, she kind of started to basically raise my inner strength within me. And I broke the board. And she gave me a big hug. But what was interesting is that day there was a woman who actually was in the course, and she was much older than me, and I had a lot of respect for her. And she came to see me, and she said, Marika, I would follow you anywhere and everywhere. I was like, oh, that's interesting. That the day I broke down, that she comes to me and says this to me. Obviously, I'm missing something when it comes to leadership, right? And really that got me thinking into, what it really means to lead, and what it really means to actually be strong. And, that day was a very simple yet powerful understanding that actually leadership is really who you are when the shit hits the fan. If you are daring to be yourself, and if you're daring to be vulnerable, and if you pull yourself out of challenges, in that way of authenticity. This is what people want, because this is inspiring, and people see actually where you're taking them. So when I came back, I was like, okay, I need to really integrate that in my next chapter. And this is how conscious leadership came together, because I have a strong business woman inside of me, and I also have a strong, kind of transformative power inside of me. It was like, they need to come together, and we really need a new paradigm of leadership. So, to answer the latter part of your question, conscious leadership is a new system of leadership, a new paradigm that is based on different values that are cooperation, collaboration, co-creation, compassion, as opposed to domination, force, power, competition, which, if we just level all that to a higher vision, it's also about retiring the patriarchy system within the business world and within the world in general.
Well, you say something very interesting, because it is very power dominating and things like that. And that's how they think about business, or they just think about the corporate world. And so my question, Marika, is what have you seen to help them switch that paradigm? Because let's be honest, right? Collaboration, it sounds like weakness. Community sounds like weakness, right? And that's, to me, is how they probably perceive it. But I love to kind of get your response. What have you noticed in trying to get them to transform that paradigm to say, hey, this is actually will elevate and will get a better buy-in for your people and grow your business?
Yeah. Well, first, in any work that I do with people, I like to pinpoint people towards the cost of how they are currently behaving, right? So if we look at it this way, what's the cost of being in a paradigm of competition, power? Well, first, it's draining, it's exhausting, because as you know, you're always in fight or flight mode. So even on a physical level, it's exhausting. That's why we see, burnouts and all of that. And even, talking about women, we don't have the same hormonal system as men. So we can't function like this. We have much more burnouts within women than with men because of that reason, right? So it's this understanding that actually, first, it's damaging for us. And second, what does it create, right? Because yes, you can compete, but if you have a competition mindset, there will always be somebody who's going to be better than you. So it's just like a race, and it's not satisfying, it's not fulfilling. So on the other side of it, you're just competing, it's like people against one another. So you can't communicate, you can't connect, you can't collaborate. So it's, showing people and having people reflect in their day-to-day lives. What is it that they're really creating with those values of competition, domination, and all of that? And if there is a payoff to them, I invite them to also, reflect on the payoff. Because what's the payoff when you're in that paradigm? It's ego, right? It's power, but it's fake. So, it's getting people to this place of awareness that actually they have been living an illusion of power that is not serving them. It's not serving others, but it's not serving them. And then it's about how about experiencing a new way of doing things. I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm asking you to experience something different and see how it feels and see how it performs. Because now the great thing is that there is a lot of data to prove what I'm saying, right? So it's much easier. But it's a stronger invitation for people to at least try. But I can tell you that everybody who kind of follows that invitation really does experiment. What are the changes, right? One of them is inner peace, right? Stronger self-awareness, better connection with myself, but also a sense of calmness and stillness, understanding that we don't have to thrive on stress, that stress can be good, but it's not something that we should be addicted to. And also they can experience higher levels of fulfillment, of impact, and of success, because this works better, right? When teams collaborate, when teams are engaged, the results are much greater than when they don't. And even now, the beautiful thing is that the world has evolved a lot since I started consciousleadership.org. But, the world is longing for products and services that actually have a force for good within them, with conscious leaders who actually understand everything within their business with the angle of the impact that they have on people, planet, and profit. So it's those three pillars rather than just profit.
So let's talk a little bit about that transformation a little bit. So let's say, for example, you have some individuals that are more, competitive, more power driven, more determined and so forth, and they want to transfer into that collaborative community base, right? Where, like you said, they see the power of authenticity and the buy-in and things like that. They get it. What does that transformation look like to properly, you don't want to have your whole team all of a sudden just be authentic, right? Or something like that. There's got to be a proper way of transformation through that. So if you could just walk us through that, what you would do with your clients.
Sure. So do you want to focus on the individual journey or on the kind of collective team organizational journey?
Well, let me ask you, which one have you noticed is the toughest journey for them? Is it the team or is it the individual? I'm just curious.
I would say the individual is the toughest because it's the deepest, right? Because you have to go deep within yourself. So, if you ask me about the different processes, we have those three pillars that are clarity, presence, and creation. And so most of the people on earth actually spend a lot of their time in the creation process. So they're action driven and they are execution driven and they want to get from A to B, right? So I would say some people are like 90% in creation. What we teach is that you have to be a third in each, a third in clarity, a third in presence, a third in creation. The creation comes last, right? So clarity is about really understanding who you are. When I mean understanding who you are is understanding the programs that you have received, right? What are the inherited patterns that you've received from your childhood, from your parents, from society, from your culture, so that you understand where you are on autopilot and where you are behaving from an ego perspective. So let me give you an example, right? If you're faced with a difficult conversation, are you going to react or are you going to respond, right? Are you going to go into potentially avoiding conflict? That's a pattern. Or, being quite overwhelming and dominating in conflict? Or are you going to be able to create some space so that you can show up in a way to create a win-win resolution? Right? So those are things that we have to go deep within ourselves because they are deeply ingrained in our DNAs, right? So in order to create that space of consciousness, we have to do that work. So it's a place of clarity, but it's also a place of presence, which is emotional intelligence. Right? So emotional intelligence, I mean, a conscious leader cannot be a conscious leader without developed emotional intelligence, right? And this is understanding my emotions, understanding how to master my emotions so that I can show up in a place of neutrality and I can show up in a place of collaboration and co-creation, right? So once we have the clarity piece that is done, I know who I am, I know what I want, I know where I'm going, I have the emotional presence to actually, see this through, and then I'm going to create. The creation is just a piece of execution, but it's very it's more a flow than actually a strategy, right? So it comes from the clarity and the presence. So those are, that's a model to understand conscious leadership, but there are plenty. There are many ways to look at it. But yeah, that's one way to talk about it. And then if we move that to teams, as each individual is becoming more clear and more present, then the team just works better together, right? It's great also for teams to have a similar language so that they understand and they are able to read one another and to see where one another is in their consciousness and their unconsciousness, right? So that works amazingly. And yeah, then the culture of the organization eventually can change. But, to change a culture, first, you have to have the buy-in of the leaders. The leaders need to do the work. They need to, promote the culture and be a role model to the culture. And then you have to bring in, inside the organization. And what I've found is that you don't change a culture like that. Try to change it because some people within the organization are going to evolve and transform, and they're going to inspire others to follow their path. So, you always have people who are ahead, and it's harder for them because they are walking the bridge as they build it. But then people get inspired because they see the radiance of those people going through that inner transformation, and they see how much more results they get and how much more fulfilled they are. So they just want to, embrace the same path.
So you work with the top level leaders for that conscious path, that transformation. Now, when you're working with a group, whether that's, 10, 15, 30 people, whatever it may be, whatever that group is, do you also individually help them through their own, leadership path, if you will? Or is it more of like, it's just the strategy is slightly different because instead of one to one, it's one to many in that group?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So one-on-one, one-to-one, I work only with the top leaders, right? But then we have loads of different programs. We have 5 different programs that actually allow us to bring conscious leadership within a whole organization. So, the top leaders might require one-on-one, but they might do group as well. And then the middle managers can do groups. And then we have some online curriculums that can be brought to the whole organization. Group work is fantastic because it's more powerful. It allows people to learn from one another. It allows people to really feel that they're not alone, that other people are going through the same problems. And something very simple as understanding that someone else is going through has self-doubt or anxiety or self-confidence issue. For some people it's quite new. They're like, oh my god, I thought I was the only one being like this. So that's very helpful. And then they also ask questions. When I work in a group, I always see people having answers to a question that was asked by someone else, but it really resonates with them. So it's a beautiful work to do. The one-on-one for me is something that I do when there is such a level of confidentiality, or there is such a when the person has such a crazy calendar, then like group calls is too difficult for them. But I actually create more powerful transformation within groups. We also have a retreat. It's called Awaken, and it's in Kenya, in Lamu Island. So that's 7 nights, 9 days, and that's highly transformative. So, we have clients who join on those retreats. They are much more about consciousness rather than, business, but they are a big accelerator of consciousness. What you would do in 12 months, you do in a week. So, it's people really feel attracted to what they are needing in the moment, really.
Well, what I always find so interesting about these topics specifically is that a lot of times we are running through life and running leadership, running businesses in a conscious state, but we're not even aware of certain things that we are doing. So we don't realize sometimes that we come across maybe more dominant, or maybe we cut off people. And maybe it's someone, a third party or someone that you love has to kind of mention that to them and say, hey, you're not a good presence in the meeting, right? Or whatever it is, right? And I love to kind of talk about like that process a little bit, because I do think that's very, very, you have to come in with humility as a leader, and it's tough. Definitely when, hey, I'm the leader. I've been able to build and produce results because of what we've been able to do. Blah blah blah. I'm head honcho, right? I'm very dominant, and this is how I'm. This is all I'm familiar with. This is it. This is all I know. I'm not familiar with community, and so it's like, talk a little bit about that difficulty of that transformation, and really coming in like having the proper characteristics in order to really say, okay, you know what, I really want to grow in this area, but it does take a check in the ego. It does take humility, and I love to kind of walk through that a little bit. Like, what are certain challenges that you've seen your clients deal with that they really had to take a grip on full throttle because, hey, you're losing revenue, you're losing your teammates because of this specific characteristic, and you need to adjust that?
Yeah. It's true that it does require a certain level of humility. It's also true that the mindset is not at the same level in every part of the world. I would say in the US, people are much more conscious that, if you have a coach, if you don't have a coach, you're a bit missing out. You're a bit stupid, right? It's just like, excuse my French there. But, it's part of the performance culture. Whereas in Europe, in the UK where I live, it's a bit more like that. But then in France, we're not there yet, right? So it's really understanding that, if you have somebody who's going to help you perform better, it's the same as taking care of your physical body. It's the same as, going to the hairdresser and all of that. It's part of your, routine in order to achieve your best potential. So you have to start with that curiosity and that awareness and that openness to be like, okay, what could I do better? What could I learn? So you have to be a learner, right? If you're a knower, you're most likely not going to be able to be coachable. So you have to be a learner, you have to be willing to explore yourself, and you have to be open to, new ways of understanding yourself. But now it's just coming across so strongly, I would say, for the last six months to a year, that consciousness is more and more asked for, in products and services. And I have more and more people kind of starting to understand that if they want to stay relevant, they kind of have to become more conscious, right? So now there is another push for people, and if we can talk a little bit about, genders here, like I work with both men and women, and I love to work with both. I would say men ask for help when they're in crisis mode, when there is chaos around, and it's difficult, right? But hopefully, I always say one of the highest forms of intelligence is to be able to ask for help. But men need to be in that place where it's just a bit of a shithole, right? Whereas women, we kind of are more disciplined into understanding that working on ourselves is always beneficial. So it's not necessarily going to be a crisis or a chaos that's going to push us to work on ourselves, which is why women tend to work on themselves on a longer journey, whereas men, they come for something specific and then it's sorted, and then they're like, okay, so I have to show them that actually there is a next step, right? But once the men we work with are kind of understanding the changes, they're hooked, because they're like, it's such a new way of being, and it's actually, men have been repressed to feel and been told that, it's weakness to feel, it's weakness to be sad, it's weakness to be weak. So it's difficult, right? It's difficult there is a lot of pressure that has been put on men. And when you can actually change your perspective and understand that it doesn't have to be this way, and that maybe there is another way that is going to be more fulfilling for you, and you're willing to explore that, there is a lot of magic that can happen. But you have to be open.
Well, I really appreciate that insight, specifically with the gender kind of specifications, because I have also seen that as well. You've obviously have gotten more detailed in that regard. And I always found that so interesting, because it is that pain versus pleasure, right? Some people go for, are motivated for that pleasure. Women tend to be and say, I want to be a better person and so forth. And that long-term thinking versus men, it's like, okay, I'm in this crap hole. Now I'm in pain. And then that's when I start changing. And it's so very interesting, because then you start living reactively. So let's kind of talk a little bit about like man versus woman a little bit. Okay. So we've got a woman that obviously is self-improving, always wants to move, always wants to be kind of in that trajectory, always want to know that next step. Man, like we just talked about, is in that pain. Do you find that a lot of men, when they're in that pain, like you just said, when they solve that solution, I know you said you have to convince them to keep going to the next level, but is it more of you having to convince them, or do they say, oh, I see now why this is so important, and I want to continue the journey of consistent growth?
Well, it's not a black and white answer. I would say that some men who have transformed the most because actually there was such a big chaos, let's say somebody who's at the same time getting divorced and losing his job. There is a lot of reimagination, right? Or like a big crisis within their business and stuff like that. They had to find something within themselves, and they had to really dive deep into that transformative power within themselves, that they got it, right? They clicked. And so they understand that actually that self-worth is an expensive force. So they kind of want to continue, but they are pausers. But that's what women as well, because when you actually, what we talk about is really ascension, right? It's ascending into higher states of consciousness. And so each time you reach a new state, there is a form of plateau that you have to solidify, right? And sometimes you are triggered, so you go back to the lower stage, and sometimes you are kind of moving forward to the next level, and you're kind of getting some insights and all of that. But you really have to solidify that space. And so what I find is that men tend to stand a bit longer in that place of solidification, until they realize that, it's getting boring, or that they're kind of stuck again, right? And then they're like, okay, I see now that I want to get to the next level. So there is a bit more of solidity of the evolution for men, whereas women are just more fluid, right? I see women evolving between 1, 2, or 3 levels of consciousness within 6 months, and then they're just kind of getting to the next stage. So it's a different way of evolution as well.
So let's talk about that. So what do you think women have, and maybe their characteristics, maybe their behaviors, maybe their mindset, that help them consistently move, and like you said, that kind of free flowing to keep going to the next step compared to men, and how can we adapt that a little bit to our own behaviors?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, first of all, I want to say that, one of my visions when it comes to conscious leadership is that we both, as men and women, have a masculine and a feminine within us, and that we both want to reach a place of inner union and inner balance between the two, right? Both men and women. So ideally, men and women have the same balance and evolve what feminine and masculine within themselves, right? So for me, this is true gender equality, right? And we both have to do some work in order to get there, men and women. But back to your question, I think women, because of who we are, and really about due to our ability to create, to give birth, maybe we are more tuned in with intuition. We are more tuned in with I don't want to say empathy, because I don't want to say that men don't have empathy, but maybe, there is more of a heart-led force within women that's kind of within us, right? So we have a tendency to kind of be able to adapt probably a bit more, to emphasize a bit more, which creates more fluidity in the way we evolve and in the way we transform. And the more we, evolve, and the more we become conscious, the more we reinforce that, which I call the feminine power, which is the soft power, right? Which is flow, fluidity, agility, receptivity, intuition. That's a feminine force that's accessible to men as well. So I think it's more built within us if we are able to tap into it. And then for men, I think sadly, the system is stronger. Like the pressure of the system is stronger on men than it is on women. The stronger of even of the patriarchal structure, right? But the society structure is stronger, so that it's just more dense for them, right? Within their own consciousness and their own energy, there are centuries of a system that is quite stuck in its own ways. So for them, it's just harder to change. Because it really is asking of them to get out of their own ways and to find new ways. Whereas for women, it's kind of actually listening to what is really within us. So tapping into who we really are. Whereas for men, yes, there is that, but first they have a lot of deprogramming to do. And that's heavy.
And that, I appreciate you kind of diving into that, because I think that's the biggest thing, is like there are certain things that you cannot control, right? Culture, it is very heavy, and we acknowledge it, but also being aware of it then allows you to kind of say, okay, I'm not going to give power to culture, and I'm going to do my path and follow through on that. It's like being more aware of these things, and these things that actually produce the result, right? Those highest leverage activities. So I appreciate you diving into that. Now, you did mention something I want to kind of circle back around. You do have an incredible community, which is the Awaken Retreat. Talk a little bit more in depth about that, because obviously seeing the massive transformation, I understand. I've been in different retreats that help you just submerge yourself in this and really make massive improvements. So love to hear about kind of what that's about, what that looks like, and as well as the results that you've seen in people with people that have attended this retreat.
Yeah, sure, with pleasure. Well, the Awaken Retreat was born, the first one was in February 2022, so, not so long ago, because I stayed in Kenya for 3 months during the first lockdown, and it was more of a destiny thing, because I was there for Christmas, and I just stayed because I didn't want to go back to lockdown. And I realized I could work from there, and, it's kind of opened loads of possibilities. If I'm being able to work from, a small island in Kenya, that's nice, right? But I always love to bring people together, and I always love to tap into the power of community. So while I was there, I did a 1-day conscious leadership day with women for women, with all the COVID nomads that were there, same as me, and it was great. And I realized that this place, Lamu Island in Kenya, just holds an amazing energy when it comes to the feminine and the masculine. So it has a strong feminine energy, but at the same time, you know, the root, the earth is very masculine. So it's an amazing place for me to, you know, use the elements to create even greater transformation. So we work really on that, on your feminine and on your masculine. So teaching you how to actually, you know, move away from the distorted masculine, the distorted feminine. So the distorted masculine is all what we talked about: domination, power, competition, all of that, but also, you know, all forms of kind of abuse. And the distorted feminine is the, you know, the feminine that is going to allow that, right? Because it takes two to tango. So if I am being dominated, I am allowing somebody to dominate me, right? So the work on the feminine side is to actually stop those, you know, stop tolerating those distorted patterns so that there is no engagement in anything else than a healthy masculine. So we work on healing both sides, the feminine and the masculine within us. So, you know, it's a beautiful retreat. It's 7 nights, 9 days. We do every morning yoga, meditation. Then we have a workshop where I teach those things. And then I create an experience that is going to allow you to embody that teaching, right? Because teaching is one thing, but if it's not embodied, it's useless. So I'm, you know, I everything I do, and that's coming from, you know, my shamanic knowledge and teachings, is that we work on the emotional, the physical, the mental, and the spiritual bodies. Those are the 4 bodies that we have. And if we don't work on those 4, we don't create a full transformation. So that's the gift of this retreat, is that you're going to be able to work on those 4. You know, it's much more difficult in, you know, an online program. Here it's the space to do so. So you're going to transform on a physical level. So you're going to, you know, feel healthier, fitter, you know, have nutritious foods, all of that. Eventually lose a bit of weight. But you're also going to learn a lot about yourself, and you're going to release you know, the patterns that are holding you back. You're going to be aware of them, release them. You're going to release some emotions that might have kept you stuck. You're going to get better insight on what is, you know, your next step in life. Eventually, what is your purpose? What brings you joy? And you're going to come back home. And also, I love a bit of fun. So, you know, it's I bring people together that, you know, are self-aware. They are certain caliber, but they also want to have a good time. So it's really it's a highly transformative holiday, right? You come home, you know, with first some very strong connections that you've built with cool people, but also much more in tune with who you are. You feel, you know, more connected with your intuition, more connected with yourself. You have some tools in order to relate, to lead, to perform much better with your family, your spouse, your friends, your organization, all of the world, right? You, of course, you feel refreshed, nourished, all of that, but you are going to keep those practices as well with you. You know, I'm big on that. I mean, we need some supportive practices in order to maintain the highest level of consciousness that we can be in at each moment, right? And everybody struggles with that. I mean, some people more than others, right? And so with that retreat, the amazing results is that you're going to keep, you know, we do 2 hours of yoga every day. It's for every level, but you're going to bring home at least 15 minutes of morning yoga that you're going to do. And all the clients who there have, you know, they've continued to do that, because once you experience the transformation, once you experience the benefits, you're like, okay, it does make sense. I'm going to make the effort, right? So there is a lot of experiences to actually connect you more with your emotional intelligence, with your spiritual intelligence. So, you know, and it's beautiful. So we go for a full day on the sea, for, you know, to cruise on a dhow boat, which is like the original Kenyan boats. You know, we do for a sunset sail. We go and visit a beautiful old town that's called Lamuta. I mean, we do loads of amazing stuff. And yeah, it's quite magical.
That's awesome. And so kind of tell us a little bit about like some of the individuals that have been to your event and kind of the transformation that they've had, but also the results that they've been able to produce, because, you know, maybe that may be 6 months, 8 months, you know, 18 months down the road, because of this, just this immersion and submersion of your retreat.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna share a beautiful story there, because so the retreat we did in February, And it was a complex project because it was at the beginning of February, so we were still in the middle of the pandemic pretty much everywhere, and flight restrictions and all of that. So at this stage, I was like, whoever comes, it's going to be a miracle. But we had a few women there, and of course, it's always in my mind that it's how can I support my clients find more purpose, connect more with positive impact in a way that's authentic. So on the first day of the retreat, there was a fashion show at the Peponi Hotel, which is like it's a beautiful place, and it's very authentic, and it's the only place in the village where people gather together, right? And so the children of the village had created some outfits with the doll cells that they had painted themselves, and they were doing a fashion show at the Peponi Hotel in order to raise money to create an art center for them to stay and to create and to learn, right? So we were there with our clients and with all, the retreat people, and it was very touching, and it was very beautiful, and I saw two of my clients being very touched and almost like brought to tears by this. And what said to me, I really want to do something with children and the art world, and she works in the art world. And another one has a production company, and she was like, oh, I want to do something like production wise in Africa. And so, the following day we went to see Nyambura, who is the woman who leads an NGO there that creates this art center, and she took us to the place. And I came back to the retreat house on the night, and then I went to bed, and then at 3 a.m. I woke up, and my brain was just going boom, 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 boom. And I had this vision of how we could support this NGO, and I shared it with them at breakfast, and they were like, yes, let's do it. So we just decided that we were going to do a documentary on the story of the NGO, that we're going to do some beautiful portraits of the children, that we were going to sell their outfits, that we could do that in London in a fantastic gallery that's called Hauser and Wirth, because one of my clients works there. It's one of the biggest galleries in the world, and that we would collect some money. And they were all in, and this was at the beginning of February, and we had our event actually 10 days ago. So in 3 months, we created all of that. It was a lot of work, to take the pictures, to do the documentary, but we were all working together with that in mind, that actually we were very clear on why we were doing it. We were very clear on how we could contribute. There was we were all giving our time. So we are very respectful of what, each other was able to give, and really able to help one another when one was like, oh my God, that's a crazy week, I can't do anything on this project, right? But it worked, and it was, we had like 70 people come, and it was very easy because everybody was invited. I invited 15 people, and then the girls did the same, and we collected like almost £20,000. So in 3 months, it's really nice what we've been able to achieve together, just because we came together and we were touched by the same thing, and we were like, can we actually use our skills, our talents, the caliber that we are in each industry that we work in, and do something with that. And it was an amazing teaching, because it was extremely successful. We achieved it in 3 months. We all had a great time. There were some challenges, and we powered through them. So it was like executing together, but with a bigger purpose, and just collaborating and actually getting shit done very well. So it was like a proof of the concept of just, you've done the retreat, and now let's do something with it, and let's all experience that together. So yeah, so now it's great, because we have more and more ambassadors of conscious leadership, because we have more and more people who actually taste it and experience it.
Well, see, what I think is so interesting is just to kind of pivot back to what you were talking about earlier on, is the collaboration, right? That is the key aspect behind really producing bigger results. And what I find so interesting in today's world right now is partnership and collaboration is really, really big, right? So many people are leveraging like paid ads, which is cold audience and so forth. But it's like when you start really leveraging the collaboration aspect, and what is so interesting is like, even if you guys are in the same field and maybe have the same service, it's the reality is that you can still collaborate. You don't have to be competitors. You can still collaborate and bring value, because each person has their own perspective, their change, their different ways of looking at it. And like you said, the ultimate goal is X, Y, Z, whatever it is. In your situation, it was that, right? And what I found so interesting is you guys all collaborated together, and because you're able to have that synergy, it brought bigger results. And we get that, and we see that all the time. So I love to talk a little bit better, a little bit further into really dialing in the collaboration aspect. What are certain creative ways that you have been able to implement it in your business, in your own life, to really leverage those relationships to make an impact at a bigger and a higher level?
Yeah. And that's a great question, right? Because I'm like you, I'm big on collaboration and community, obviously. And I'm always thinking about how can I amplify that? And how can I even, fully rely on that in my business, right? Is that a possibility, right? That I can fully rely on collaboration and community in my business and really move away from ads and all of that. And, I really see that the field is changing, right? The market in general is changing. I mean, we all know that ads are kind of much more difficult these days, right? So it's not just for the coaching industry, it's for all businesses, right? We live in a world that is now global. There is your product, even if you have an amazing USP, it's probably going to be available a lot. So it's much more difficult for people to buy. And before we needed, I think, 3 touch points. Now we need 20 touch points, right? So do we still want to play this game? Right? Because it's just exhausting, to be honest. Like, I mean, like, if I need 20 touch points, I'm gonna die. So, even if you systemize and you scale and you automate, it's just like, it's I think it's a good question to ask yourself, right? And so it's a pivot that, we are working on, that a lot of my clients are working on as well. How can we actually enhance collaboration and community? I think another aspect of conscious leadership is being in that constant state of innovation and constant state of creating something different, because what is there doesn't really work or doesn't really resonate. And I can see that in the world right now, in a lot of businesses, if you have an existing businesses and you have a legacy and you have a community, you have clients, it still works, right? Or if you have something highly innovative and you're kind of the only one, it can work as well. But for the rest, it's much more difficult than it used to be. Of course, there are some people who can be, very successful overnight. I don't know much, but I think everybody is kind of asking themselves this question, because there is also an understanding that the old ways are not working. So, how can we, redefine or elevate the concept of collaboration and community? So what we do in our business is that we have one of our biggest programs is the Academy for Conscious Leaders, and that's a 3-year program where you go from unconscious leader to conscious leader, right? So you learn emotional intelligence, spiritual intelligence, system intelligence, you learn self-awareness, loads of things like that. But you're also surrounded by conscious leaders who are walking this path with you. And so we really now want to promote and enhance collaboration. So on all our social now, we're interviewing our clients so that they talk about their business, they talk about how they are, conscious leaders in their business, so we kind of give them a platform to promote their business. And we also, encourage our clients to promote one another. So, this is like this kind of sharing of platforms, sharing of support, sharing of exposure and visibility, from a place of alignment. I know that we are aligned. I know that we are operating from the same value system, that we share some similar beliefs. I like what you do. I like your products. So, I'm happy to actually support you. That works quite well, obviously. And then, it's the retreat was the project we did after the retreat was a great example of that. But it was, really an example of also honoring and respecting one's another lane, right? Like, this is your field, you're good at that, we're gonna need that, we leave that with you, right? This is my field, I'm gonna take care of that. So there was a lot of respect, a lot of trust that was there, and also a very high caliber of execution with the women that were there. But it was really that level of trust and that level of commitment to make it work together that made the difference.
Well, what I find so interesting is we definitely, like you're saying, it is so powerful because definitely you're having that synergy with other individuals that are in your community. But I always find it so interesting because it's like, I love the resourcefulness and the creativity that people bring to different partnerships. Just like you said, there's just so many different ways. And it's not a negotiation aspect, right? Where it's like, okay, hey, I'll give you this if you give me this, right? It's more of like, oh, cool. I want to add value to your community in XYZ because of my experience. And you can add value to my community with ABC. And then all of a sudden now, hey, that's fine with cross promoting, or even just what I've noticed with leveraging a lot of my consultant, my clients. I've noticed a lot of people are starting to collab and building their own offers and bringing all their offers together and making almost like a mega offer business structure. And I thought that was really unique, because now it's, instead of, hey, this is their service and that service, it's, hey, this is our service together. Well, now instead of getting one-on-one mentorship with one person, I'm getting one-on-one mentorship with two of the amazing people, right? Like whatever it is. And I just always find that so interesting. I just love the creativity and resourcefulness behind it. And I appreciate you diving into that, because again, you've been able to build some incredible, beautiful stuff. Like you said, it wasn't done by accident. You had 70 people there. It was through just collaboration, partnership. So let's kind of dive back into your journey a little bit in the conscious leadership. Okay. Where do you see right now with the culture, with everything that's going on, where do you see, society at right now? And where do you see it in the future because of what you're doing in the world?
Yeah, that's a big question. Well, I think society right now is a bit at a crossroads. I mean, one of the benefits, in my opinion, of the pandemic was a global awakening of, people being forced to be with themselves, people being forced to, reassess their lives, reassess their resources, how they spend their resources, who they spend time with, and all of that. So, for some people, it was really, really harsh because they hadn't had the opportunity before to do that kind of work or to be with themselves, right? So it has created some kind of harsh awakenings and sometimes, some breakdowns and more sadly. But, a lot of people are questioning, a lot of people are asking themselves, is this how I want to live? Is there a different way to live? So at least, there is kind of a density of uncertainty that's there. Some people are really seizing that opportunity to grow and to kind of elevate their consciousness and to change the way they live, the way they work, and the way they are, right? And some people are resistant to it. So the ones that are resistant are creating, there is an energetic field of anger, of kind of resentment, of blame. So, this is why some people are short-tempered, or, there is more aggressivity and all of that. It's kind of that resistance to change. And, what I see now is that, and I'm going into kind of high-level visions there, so bear with me. But, before there could have been an enmeshment, right, of the less conscious and the more conscious people. We are all functioning together, and it was a bit of a gray matter. But now I can see that it's much more difficult for the unconscious people and the conscious people to function together. It's almost like the gap in the level of consciousness is too wide, and the conscious people are kind of refusing to engage in anything that is unconscious now. But it was at the beginning almost like a survival mode, right? Because there was so much going on, there was so much stirred within the collective consciousness due to the pandemic and also the war that, it's just out there, right? So I really see that there is more of a separations that's being created, and people really having to choose. Even myself now, I don't engage with people who don't have the level of consciousness that I need them to have for me to engage with them. I just don't want to waste my time and my energy, whereas before I would have. Now I'm like, I can't, because actually I'm busy there. I'm busy creating conscious stuff. So that's your job. If you want to grow, you do. If you don't, you don't. But that's not my problem, right? So and I see the same within the business world again. And if I talk about me, I'm like, I don't want to do business with people who are not conscious, because that's going to create problems. It's going to be difficult money conversation. They're going to try to screw me. There's going to be some manipulation, some hiding, some lies, so I don't see the point, right? So more and more, there are some choices that are being made with who you want to engage with, and the awareness of your consciousness and the awareness of the consciousness of the people you engage with. So, for me, we're there. And I see a lot of beauty and growth and transformation on the side of the consciousness, but I also see a lot of holding on and a lot of kind of hard density in the people that are resisting change. So, I hope we're going to go in the right direction. But there is a lot of change. There is a lot of positivity that's there. But as with any change, it does come through chaos. So there is still, in my opinion, more chaos to be kind of steered, and the mud to be kind of moved around. And we have to stay strong in our alignment and in our consciousness, and stay aligned with our values.
Well, I think you said something, because out of chaos does come obviously progress, right? And movement. The sad thing is we have to embrace the chaos, right? And the reality is that chaos has to come in order to be able to do that, right? And it sucks, but like you said, it will achieve a better result. And I love what you said as well. It's like, hey, I'm living at this level. I honestly cannot waste my time and live down here, right? In order for you to spend time with me, you have to make the conscious decision to travel that path to get up here, so that you and I can have that higher level conversation. And honestly, I think it's like, you don't take ownership of those people's decisions. They have to take ownership of themselves and so forth. And you love living up here. You want to help them. You want to produce them. You want to, but you can't unless they decide and choose, right? And I love that. It's a deep truth. And sadly, I remember many years when I wasted so much of my time trying to help people that were poor try to get wealthy, and the reality was it was their decision, it was their choice, right? And it's a sad, hard truth. And the only thing is, I want to find people that want to get wealthy, right? Everybody wants to, but obviously moving that direction. Marika, I just appreciate the massive insight that you've been able to share with our audience, share with me. I've been taking notes over here, which is awesome. How can our audience reach out to you, be part of your community, be part of what you've got going on?
Yeah, thank you for that. You can follow us on Instagram, Marika Messager. And so, yeah, you will share my name, right? Because I say it in French, Marika Messenger in English. So that's a really nice way. But also you can check our website, consciousleadership.org. So you've got loads of amazing free resources there. We have a 60-minute masterclass that's called Refocus and Plan for Success. That's going to give you some great tools when it comes to emotional mastery and understand your leadership style. We also have some free guided meditations on the website, and sign up for our mailing list, because every week we send out some really good content. So that's a great way. If you want to know more about Awaken, I'd love to have a conversation with you. It's a beautiful journey. There is a form on our website to book a call with me, so just reach out and I'll be very happy to have a conversation.
Awesome. And guys, those links will be in the description below. So make sure you click on that. Make sure you just be part of her community and what she's got going on. And Marika, again, I just appreciate the incredible amount of value that you brought, talking about conscious leadership, talking about your journey, and really developing it, and obviously the impact that you've been able to make because of your journey. But before we let you go fully, is there any last words of wisdom that you would like to share with our audience?
No, today you've asked me 2 questions. I didn't have an answer for any of them, but it's unlike me. But I would say maybe just flow, right? Don't be the flow. That's the word of wisdom, which is what I'm doing today, right?
I love it all. I love it. Hey, and that, my friends, is Marika Messenger. Guys, that is Journey with Christian D. Evans podcast. Until next time, remember, be uncommon if you can. Yo, this is Christian D. Evans, Journey with Christian D. Evans podcast. We thank you so much for listening to this amazing episode. If you feel and you know that this was valuable to you, please show some love to our amazing guest by liking this, by commenting on this, by making sure that you do a nice 5-star review, and just show some love to our guest. That'd be really awesome. Also, make sure you share this with a friend, a family, a colleague, someone that you believe would bring value to their life right now. And guys, we just want to say thank you again for just being part of our community. If you want to have more resources, don't be afraid. Go to christianDevans.com. You can actually schedule a phone call with me, or you can send me an email at christian.evans@beUncommonIfYouCan.com. That's christian.evans@beUncommonIfYouCan.com. Always love to hear some feedback, and let me know what is the number 1 or 2 things that you are struggling in your business and your life, and we'll make sure we have those conversations. Guys, that is Journey with Christian D. Evans podcast, and until next time, remember, be uncommon if you can. Cheers.